Chapter 21. "Oh my God!" Natasha exclaimed as Geeta giggled with her news. It was early evening and the friends were sitting in the lawns. "Yes, the maid walked in on Julie and Michael having sex. She ran out in tears and came to my place. She didn't know if she should quit or keep the job since she needed the money." Julie and Michael were the American neighbors who were quite famous for not being able to blend in. "Some people are so progressive," Sarita said as she blushed a little, recalling the outlandish sex positions her husband had made her do only a month ago. Her hand had healed completely, but her heart was still heavy. She'd followed Jay to his office and realized that Shefali was just his subordinate who he didn't interact with at all. She had stalked him and read all his phone messages. She now knew where he went and what he did at all times of the day. And in the end, all she could gather from this intensive private detective role she had embraced was that her husband was really boring at work. Shefali had been flirting with him, but he never responded, and he immediately came home to her post-work. So if he loved her so much, why wouldn't he still make love to her? She had even cuddled and said that she was ready to do things, but he had pushed her away, replying that he wasn't. Now her mind had been racing. Did he only want kinky sex? Would they ever go back to even missionary? Or worse, would they just stop having sex altogether? While her thoughts took her to Jay, her friends gossiped about their American neighbors. "But what time did she enter the house? No bai works at night," Aarti asked. It was the middle of the afternoon. Julie gave the bai a key, but she forgot to tell her they had returned from their vacation. So as usual, she went in at 2 in the afternoon to clean up, and there they were, completely naked on the bed, and Ursula screamed and ran out of there. Geeta dramatically retold the maid's story. "Then?" Aarti asked. She had always loved drama. "Then what?" Geeta said with a sly smile. "You know what happens after that, na, Aarti?" All the girls burst into peals of shy laughter, not wanting to admit any details from their own marital lives. "Are you still going to send the girls for their music to Julie's house now?" Sarita asked Geeta. "Of course. I'm sure they won't be at it in front of my children. Julie's an excellent music teacher. You should send Ria to her." Sarita shook her head. "Nah, Baba, nah. I'm not sending my children anywhere. You don't know how they can get corrupted and from where." Natasha bit her tongue. The memory of that night of having sex with Rahul came flooding into her brain. It had been nothing like she had ever experienced before. She didn't know how she was still sitting here with Rahul's mother, having a normal conversation. She dreaded to think what would happen if Sarita found out. She would surely lose her as a friend. But what was more worrying was if she lost Rahul as a lover. "I must tell you about Goody." Natasha wanted to steer the topic away from children and possibly Rahul. They all looked at her with bated breath. "Her husband has come back to her." Aarti's hands flew to her mouth as Geeta's jaw dropped. Only Sarita asked, "Who's Goody again?" Natasha looked at her. "Goody is the Delhi housewife who lives next door to me in Sea Wing. Her husband left her to go back to his first wife in Dubai, but she gave him an ultimatum. She said she would only wait until he returned. In the meantime, she looks after their 2 cats and 1,000,000 plants as if they're the best thing that ever happened to her." Natasha reminded Sarita as Geeta giggled at her description. Natasha always had a way with words. Being a part of the erudite culture, Geeta looked up to Natasha as the one who had everything: a glamorous life, foreign trips, a loving husband, and complete freedom. Sarita asked, "And now he's back?" "She happily took him back, no questions asked," Natasha said. "Talk about unending support, no matter what." This put the girls in a pensive mood. They all thought the same question. Would they take their husbands back after he had an affair? "It's not easy being a single or a divorced woman in this society," Geeta said. "I guess that's why we forgive our husbands for their trespasses." "That's because we're also afraid of being honest with ourselves," Aarti remarked, and they all waited for her to continue. Aarti remembered her conversation with the old woman on her recent flight. "We are the ones who are stronger. We've gone through childbirth and raised our children by ourselves. We're the ones who change for our family and children, and even after that, we don't give ourselves credit. So true, Natasha said. If a man cheated on me, I don't think I would forgive him. What if it's the woman who cheated? Sarita asked. Will that be forgivable? She looked at everyone, but Natasha thought, maybe because of guilt, that Sarita's gaze lasted longer on her. Had Rahul said anything to Sarita? Natasha wondered. She must ask him. Cheating only happens when there's no other way, Geeta said. Women should give other women some leeway. We're always pulling each other down. Look at how strong the male species is. They're always supporting each other, no matter what they do. They'll be there for each other even if they have to go out of their way. And we women, we're not ready to help each other, even if it's not out of the way. Aarti shook her head. I don't think so, Geeta. Look at us. We've always been there for each other. Women do support their friends. But yes, maybe we're quick to judge and lazy to help. But if you really needed me, I would be there for you. Geeta looked at Aarti warmly. Would she really be there for her if she learned about her and Sahil? She was an adulteress. How would her friends respond to that, she wondered. Thank you so much, Aarti. That means a lot, Geeta said. But why haven't you brought something for us to eat? Aarti teased. Natasha echoed her. Yeah, Geeta. Now we've grown used to your savory snacks. Hey, you should call your catering service that. Geeta laughed. I'm calling it Geeta's Kitchen. And I'm making a menu to figure out what to do next. I still haven't asked Shailesh what he thinks about the idea. I'll need tremendous support to do this. Her voice trailed off as she knew that she couldn't expect any support, and her dream might die yet again. She remembered that for years after Renu was born, she couldn't even go in for a shower till she finished all her household duties. She would prepare an entire breakfast for her in-laws and request them to feed it to the 2-year-old child while she went to the bathroom. When she would emerge a half-hour later, the child would be at the table with no food, while her mother-in-law would be watching television, claiming to have forgotten. When Renu was older at 5, Geeta hoped the in-laws would help her with managing their grandchild. But when Geeta would return from her grocery shopping, she would see Renu in the kitchen in the knife drawer looking for her crayons, while her in-laws were drinking tea at the dining table. And instead of Geeta reprimanding them for not keeping an eye out for her child, her mother-in-law would complain that she had to make the tea because who knows where Geeta had been roaming around. Now, Geeta had 2 daughters. She had to look after both of them. Her in-laws didn't change then, and they wouldn't change now. She couldn't start a business and still manage a house all the time. It was well for Aarti to do so because she had such great help. But Geeta had no option. She sighed. She knew the idea was now churning, but she didn't know how to take it forward. We'll support you, Natasha said. We'll look after the kids when you need us to. Don't worry. You just start with birthday parties. Lots of money to be made in children's birthdays. I agree, Geeta said, suddenly buoyed by her friend's words. Just the other day, I went to one where there were elephant rides for the kids, and the return presents were Nokia phones. Can you believe that? That's ridiculous, Natasha exclaimed. But I've also taken Dia to birthday parties where the themes were so elaborate that they would put weddings to shame. Once, she got invited to a party with the Cirque du Soleil. You guys know that, right? The circus show from Europe? They nodded. So anyway, she continued, after that party, she also started demanding she wanted Michael Jackson at her parties. Thankfully, I stopped it. Otherwise, Vikram would have sold our house to get that for her. Now we just give her money on her birthday. And let me tell you, that's not cheap either. Geeta was incredulous. What was Natasha talking about? Giving money to young children? She would never do that. And theme parties. She took her children to McDonald's till now, and everyone had a good time. Sarita said, I don't throw parties. My in-laws refuse to spend money on their own grandchildren. You think they'll spend on other people's grandchildren? Unlikely. All their life, Rahul and Ria have attended parties, but we've all just gone to Pizza Hut on their birthday as a family. Aarti smiled at Sarita. She was so simple-minded. Aarti thought of her only son, whom she indulged. She organized grand theme parties for him. She thought that if she could afford it, She should give him the best. She wondered why Natasha was so rigid with Dia, but she didn't want to sound arrogant in front of them. She said, "It's a quiproquo, isn't it? If you attend a pool party at a hotel, then you have to throw an equally expensive party for your child. Otherwise, there's tremendous pressure on him from his peers." Sarita waved her hands in the air. "That'll never end then. How big can you go? How much money can you spend? And the child in the end hardly cares. They just want to eat the same pizza and have a good time with a few close friends." Aarti thought of her son's parties, where she would call her entire family and all his friends from school and the building. She did a jungle theme once, a pirate theme another time, and a Disney theme with actual bumper cars in hired lawns in the suburbs. She had spent lakhs on each birthday party, and she knew that he enjoyed it, as did everyone who had come. She didn't think she had gone overboard. Birthdays for her only child came just once a year, and what was the point of earning so much as a family if they couldn't spend it on some fun? "I think it's ridiculous," Geeta sighed. "There's so much pressure on the parents. A child will want more. A parent can't give it. The child will feel alienated, then blame the parents. So either the parents keep up with the pressure of elaborate birthday parties or not send the child or refuse to give in. I don't see us winning this war." Geeta realized that she had 2 children and a lifetime of parties to attend and throw for them. Sarita put her hand on her shoulder. "It gets better as they grow up. They have fewer friends and don't really care for parties. Rahul, at age 10, said he wanted to buy some paints rather than go out. Riya stopped going to parties. On her birthday, she just calls a few friends over to the home and I make an elaborate meal for them. Then they cut cake." Geeta didn't feel assured. She wasn't like Sarita in the least bit. She wanted her children to have a social life and become outgoing, something she never had in her childhood and which led her to be a naive bride at a young age. She wanted them to experience the world and enjoy themselves, but she didn't know where to put a stop to the madness of birthday parties. "It's a racket," Natasha said. "The best we can do is teach our children that this is all we can afford. And they shouldn't compare themselves to others and feel they need to throw elaborate parties because everyone else does. Those friends are not worth it because they don't treasure them for who they are. They only like them for their money." The women looked at Natasha as if she was an alien. Having said these wise words, it seemed impossible that Dia was her child. The teenager demanded everything and often received it. Natasha looked at them and, as if reading their thoughts, said, "Hey, this is how I've tried to bring up Dia, but it's all her father's fault for spoiling her." The girls nodded their heads in sympathy. A woman had no say when her father had the last word. After all, he brought in the money and always got the final say. That's why it was important to earn as well. Aarti knew how important that was. "Forget about their parties. Let's all go back to my place and have some tea," Natasha said. "I'll bring dhoklas," Geeta said, and they shut her down. "What a good Jew you are. You can't think of anything but dhoklas? You don't need to bring anything. I'll just make tea and order some snacks," Natasha said. "As long as it's non-vegetarian," Geeta said. Aarti and Natasha were amazed at this revelation, even though Sarita already knew about it. They all agreed and trooped up to Natasha's house for some tea and chatter, wondering how Geeta managed to remain a strict vegetarian in her house for so many years. It was the first of their secrets that was to come